Superior coverage, simply superior.
Sasso insecticide spray and coil.
Hello, good evening. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live from Manisa Bata, Desawe Kanda. Also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. I am Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, Energy Commission report reveals Electricity Company of Ghana power sales losses hit a record high in over 2 decades, standing at 32%. How did the company get here and how can it get out of this situation? We have the details and a conversation on this tonight. Also, government is projecting a single-digit inflation by the middle of 2026, that's next year. A realistic projection or a mere imagination without any basis? Well, we're here from an economist and reacting to what the president said earlier today. And also, we have an update for you in the matter of the Accra Sky Train matter and how the ongoing legal processes are progressing. Earlier today, this matter was to have been heard in court, but as we do know, Professor Mia Kofi was not in court. He's unwell, and the trial judge had a few issues about the particular development. Stay with us. We're going to get into it here on Ghana Tonight, and we're getting some developing story we're looking at quite closely relating to the ongoing processes for the removal or otherwise of the Chief Justice, the suspended Chief Justice Getro Tukono. There is a development. Stay with us. We'll get into it here on Ghana Tonight. And as always, you are an integral part of the program. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
$925 out of 2,241 undocumented immigrants that were picked up by the Ghana Immigration Service days ago have been successfully deported, with processes underway to deport the rest. The Ghana Immigration Service disclosed these 4 days after conducting an operation to remove illegal immigrants from the streets of Accra.
We had a challenge of transporting them out. In fact, the transport company that we work with through the Niger embassy along the line failed to deliver on some of the goals that we gave them. But so far, we have about 925 who have been removed from the country, made up of 819 Nigerians and then 106 Nigerians. I'm sure by the close of the day, we'll resolve those issues with the bus company and get the rest out.
NADMO has confirmed that the death toll from Sunday's heavy rainstorm in Accra has risen to 4, with over 3,000 people displaced. A 4-year-old girl swept away in an Akron was found dead and buried according to Islamic tradition. NADMO is providing relief support and urging the public to avoid flood-prone areas during the heavy rains. The University Teachers Association of Ghana, UTAG, at the University of Ghana is raising serious concerns over what it calls the politicization of audit processes. The association says recent reports from the Auditor General's office are increasingly being used as tools to serve political interests rather than promoting accountability, and has called for reforms to ensure fairness and professionalism.
The University of Ghana management maintains that the initial audit report was not shared with them for them to make comments and clarify any discrepancies before this was made public. This is grossly unfair and unethical. This is a serious breach of the ethical standards required for the audit service and its profession.
The Ghana Atomic Energy Commission has started felling earmarked trees along the Hacho-Kwabenya Road to protect electricity cables from damage. As the rains set in, the Commission has secured approval from the Forestry Service Division to undertake the exercise. This is despite concerns raised by environmental advocacy groups about the potential depletion of the green corridor.
Last year, when there was a thunderstorm, we had about 2 of the trees uprooting and have fallen to the main road. So we realized that some of them are becoming a danger to the public. Some of the trees are also affecting ECG's lines, the pylons. So ECG themselves also, in partnership with us and Forestry Commission, have also earmarked some of the trees that are being a danger to the ECG lines. And those ones as well too have to be removed and replaced with less danger ones. And you know, we started the rainy season and the storms are definitely going to come. And you do not want surprises. And so we have to do the right thing.
President John Dramani Mahama has urged donors, investors and industry leaders to harness the untapped potential of key value chains to drive sustainable and inclusive economic growth. The president, in his opening remarks at the 3rd Ghana-EU Business Forum, called for prioritized investments in non-traditional sectors to harness the talents of Ghanaian youth.
The African Continental Free Trade Agreement opens up opportunities to reach a market of 1.3 billion people on the African continent with a combined GDP of more than $3 trillion. I invite EU investors to explore opportunities in the following areas. 1, in agro-industrial zones, integrated value chains for cocoa, cashew, shea nuts, spices and ginger, and vegetables, where EU expertise in food safety standards and packaging can add immediate value to Ghana's products.
Oh, there's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, and as always, probably brought to you by Flamingo Paint, Simply Superior, and also Sasso Insecticide Spray and Coil, Kum Tum Tum Precom. Coming up next, we're learning of a development right now. Yet another injunction application to be heard tomorrow at the Supreme Court, seeking to stop the ongoing inquiry into the petitions seeking the removal of the Chief Justice. Get to Tukono, the details. It's coming in thick and fast and is developing swiftly, and it's one that we've been looking at quite closely here on Ghana Tonight over the last few minutes that we got this information. So this is the latest development regarding the process that is ongoing, looking into the 3 petitions against the Chief Justice. As we do know, that committee, the 5-member committee that was set up, has started hearing the petitions. As we do know, was submitted and also prima facie case established against the Chief Justice, leading to that suspension. Now, last week, we got that information of this 5-member committee starting the processes for the hearing of these petitions. What we're learning today, this evening, is that the Supreme Court is to hear the suit filed by one citizen, Theodore Kofi Atta Korte. That's the name. Theodore Kofi Atta Korte, seeking to restrain this 5-member committee inquiring, probing the petition to remove the Chief Justice, Gato Tukono. The plaintiff also is seeking a number of things from the Apex Court to suspend the operationalization of the suspension warrant by the President, John Dramani Mahama, against the Chief Justice. And we understand the motion is supposed to be heard tomorrow. Dennis Barberi Wadam Esquire has been studying this information that we got exclusively here on Ghana Tonight, and is joining me in the studio right now to get an understanding of how things are playing out. Dennis, what more do we know of this latest development?
Well, Alfred, a lot seems to be happening in this space, especially as regards the petitions that are seeking the removal of the Chief Justice now suspended. The latest twist that we're getting to this is the fact that there's a pending suit which is going to be heard. The injunction bit of it will be heard tomorrow. Mind you, an injunction will have to be mounted on a substantive suit. So that means that there's a substantive suit that is before the Supreme Court, and is seeking quite a number of reliefs. But tomorrow, what's going to happen is that in addition to that substantive suit is an application for an injunction to stop all the processes that are ongoing now by way of the hearing which is ongoing as regards the petitions that are seeking the removal of the Chief Justice. Now, what's interesting about this particular suit or the injunction is that it does not only seek to stop the process ongoing, it also seeks that an order be given so that it's in respect of the suit itself, that everything that has been done by way of this process, right from the establishment of a prima facie case all through to the establishment of that committee that you see the membership here, and together with the hearing which is ongoing, be declared null and void.
I see.
Now, this is an additional layer to what we have been dealing with so far, because recall that there was also an attempt to stop the process, and the reason was that that is in respect of the Vincent case. For his argument basically was that when the president received the petitions, the law required that the president should have sent the petitions to a Chief Justice for her to respond before the prima facie case be determined by the president together with the Council of State. And to the extent that in his view that did not happen, that was a violation of the Constitution, for which he went to the Supreme Court, subsequent to which he sought an injunction which was denied.
I see.
Now, this application is mounted on the grounds that the role that the president, or the decision that the president is taking in this particular process, is one of an exercise of discretion, for which reason the provisions of Article 23 and 296 of the 1992 Constitution must apply. And in so doing, to the extent that the president is not a judicial officer, the requirement by the Constitution is that there ought to be the publication of some instruments, constitutional instruments for that matter.
I see.
And that because that constitutional instrument, in his view, has not been published, it's a violation for which the court must intervene. Alfred, if you recall, this is not an entirely new argument altogether, except to say that this is an argument that has now been submitted to a forum that can appropriately determine it. You recall the Ghana Bar Association, in its resolution, one of the key things they did indicate was the fact that they thought what the president had done by way of suspending the Chief Justice was not lawful, and their argument was that the president ought to have come under Article 296 and to that extent published a constitutional instrument to have the matter, before taking that decision of the suspension. That is largely that's the animated form of what we are having to deal with now. But like I said, this has now been put before the Supreme Court to look into it, to determine whether or not that indeed is the case. But in the interim, the applicant now is saying that let's put all the processes that are ongoing on hold.
Let's put it on hold
until the matters that are put...
Even with the hearing of this committee that began last week.
Yes.
The applicant is seeking as part of his reliefs.
Yes.
That all of that process should be put on hold.
All of that process be put on hold. So this is it. Because there is a substantive suit to be heard, the applicant is understood to be saying that, yes, I do acknowledge that I have brought before you a matter to be resolved, and that this matter that I have brought before you will take some time to be resolved. However, there is somebody in the mix whose rights will be affected by the outcome of the matter I have brought before you.
Right.
So let's put the processes on hold, if you agree with me, so that at the end of the day, if it turns out that the person whose rights will be affected by this will not be affected, then we can make a determination.
I think Vincent Assefa also made...
Yes, so we need to separate the two things.
Reliefs that he was asking
yes,
in there.
But in his case, his argument was quite different. But of course, the net effect will be the same because both applicants, and I refer to Vincent in that case and then Theodore in this particular one, are seeking to halt the process. And that's why I say the net effect will be the same, except to say that the arguments are substantially different. And like I did indicate using the GBA position on this, this is the leg of the GBA argument that has now been put before the courts. But that of Vincent Assefa was the fact that whether the petition had to be given to the Chief Justice before the consideration of a prima facie case, or it could be ongoing before it was given. That was, you recall, that debate in Parliament, that argument in court, where Justice Yoni Kolendi asked lawyer for Vincent to show which provision in the Constitution gives timelines as to what time the petition should be given to the affected Chief Justice for the response. So that was the crux of his matter. But this now has to do with the exercise of discretionary powers and how they should be exercised or ought to be exercised. It is the view of the applicant in this matter that he does not think that the exercise of discretion in even the matters of determining the prima facie case, the suspension of the Chief Justice, and even the constitution of this committee, which is currently hearing the matters, is done according to law, for which he wants the matters determined. In the interim, he seeks an injunction to stop the process altogether. And this will be heard tomorrow, Alfred.
And we have a copy of this suit that Dennis makes reference to. We're going to put it on the screen right now. And Dennis makes reference. That's what you see right there. The Supreme Court is to hear this suit that you're seeing there, filed by a citizen by name Theodore Kofi Atta-Korte, seeking to restrain the Committee of Inquiry probing the petition to remove the Chief Justice, Gertrude Tukono. Now, as Dennis has eloquently stated, the specific reliefs that this applicant is seeking, you see there the defendant in this case and respondent being the Attorney General, specifically the Office of the Attorney General, Minister of Justice. What this plaintiff is also asking for is that he wants the Apex Court to suspend the operationalization of the suspension warrant by the President, John Dramani Mahama, against the Chief Justice. And essentially, then he's talking about the suspension of the... Let's roll it up a bit, and then we'll see the full details of this suit, which we have a copy of, as you see there. If he's asking for the suspension of the operationalization of the warrant...
Yes.
That sought to, in fact, that has led to the suspension of the Chief Justice. What does it mean?
Well, so you know that when the Chief Justice was suspended, that was done in consultation with the Council of State, and that was done with the issuance of a warrant. So to suspend the suspension of the Chief Justice, I always want to use Vincent's words, to suspend the suspension of the Chief Justice, it means that that warrant will have to be suspended.
And that's one of the reliefs.
And that's one of the reliefs that Theodore is actually seeking at the moment.
I see. But Vincent has said for that particular relief he was seeking was not granted.
No, that wasn't granted. And like I did indicate, perhaps it is the view of this applicant that the argument he's now advancing will be superior to that of what the court has already denied. Mind you, the substance of the arguments put before the courts are different. And that's what we need to emphasize in this. Because when you look at this clearly, they make references to Article 23, they make references to Article 296, they make references to the absence of the publication of a constitutional instrument, which they say is a requirement under Article 296 for the exercise of discretionary powers, to the extent that they say the president is not a judicial officer. So the arguments for him, it's largely on that level. So you would find that in his case, he's not arguing along the lines of whether the Chief Justice should have been given the petitions first for her response before the prima facie case or the other way around. His argument is entirely different from what we're having to deal with in this matter. So that's the injunction application that you see on the screen.
And that's what we're talking about right now here on Ghana Tonight. And that's a copy we have also secured exclusively here on Ghana Tonight on TV3. And that's the detail that Dennis has teased out for you quite eloquently there. The Supreme Court is to hear this suit that we're seeing on the screen right now, filed by citizen Theodore Kofi Atta-Korte, seeking to restrain the Committee of Inquiry probing the petition to remove the Chief Justice, Gertrude Tukono. So the plaintiff is also asking the Apex Court to suspend the operationalization of the suspension warrant by the President against the Chief Justice. And this motion is supposed to be heard tomorrow. So we'll keep an eye on how things play out. But still staying with the courts, Dennis. And that leads us to our next issue. Coming up next here on Ghana Tonight. The full complement of this suit, as you're seeing on the screen, you can find on 3news.com. But coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, we have an update for you in the matter of the Accra Sky train that never was, and how the ongoing legal processes are progressing Well, guess what? This is one that we've been following quite closely. Lawyers of the former board chair of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund have told the Accra High Court that their client, Professor Christopher Ocansey, was rushed to the emergency ward earlier today. Now, the lead counsel, Duke Aaron Sasu, was responding to Justice Comfort Tasiame's query regarding Professor Ocansey's absence, in fact, whose plea was scheduled to be taken today. My colleague Lord Dwasari was in court earlier today, but then again, let's recall exactly what the Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Justice Edem Shremsai, said regarding this particular Sky train and how this is the second adjournment because of Professor Christopher Ocansey's absence. The first, if you recall, last week, the case was adjourned because he was on admission at the University of Ghana Medical Center. Today, they turn up in court, and then his lawyers again told the courts that he was rushed to the emergency ward today as well. The presiding judge had something to say about this development, consistent development of Professor Christopher Ocansey's absence as a result of medical issues. But this is what Dr. Edem Shremsai said on this SkyTrain matter. Take a look.
There is an active process. The Attorney General has instituted an active process of recovering, tracing these monies. So I would say that whether you do it voluntarily or not, we will do whatever it takes in the name of the Republic of Ghana to retrieve every pesewa that we can from private hands and restore those monies to the people of Ghana and to the taxpayers of this country. No, the press conference is not. The AG will hold press conference when the need arises. In this particular case, we believe that the issues are already in the public. The new journalists are very much aware of the SkyTrain issues. It was first raised in the Auditor General's report, so I don't think anyone is in a doubt as to the facts of this case. So there may not be any press conference on this. But where there's a new case which will require thorough briefing, we believe that the people of this country are entitled to know every bit of what we are doing with the power they have given us. So we will hold press conference when the need arises.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That's the Deputy Attorney General, Minister of Justice, Dr. Edem Shremsai there. But let's refresh our minds. What are the charges against Professor Christopher Ocansey? Dennis, what do we know?
We know that he's the second accused person in this particular matter. And it's because of his absence today that the court had to adjourn so that he recovers from the illness that was reported to the court. But we do know that some 3 charges have been preferred against him personally, one jointly with the CEO of the GIF in respect of the conspiracy to commit crime, and this is willfully causing financial loss to the state. He's also been charged with willfully causing financial loss to the Republic. That is just against him personally. There's also a conspiracy to commit crime, which is intentional dissipation of public funds, and also there's a charge against him as regards intentional dissipation of public funds. And this, like you rightly indicated, is in respect of that transaction that was supposed to help Ghana get an Accra Sky train. We did illustrate how some companies were set up and how GIF was supposed to have partnered a certain company to undertake this particular project with some obligations on GIF. However, it turned out that that particular project could not come to light, even though we had partnered with some $2 million in respect of purchase of some shares in another company that was incorporated elsewhere, which was supposed to be working closely with the original company that GIF had partnered on this SkyTrain matter. So, Alfred, basically these are the matters that are in contention, for which reason the good old prof now finds himself in trouble.
Talk about the good old prof, but why exactly is the trial judge not too happy about this development? What does she say regarding the 2 instances of Professor Ocansey's absence as a result of some medical issues?
Well, so if you recall, the first time they were in court, Prof was not in court, but the first accused person was in court. His plea was taken. So they had to adjourn for him to come today so that his plea will be taken. Then again, the court was informed that just this dawn, at least according to lawyers for Prof, that just this dawn they were informed that he was rushed to the hospital again. This being the second time, the judge made an observation and this is exactly what the judge said, Justice Comfort Tesem. She says that there is concern over the timing of Prof. Amia Ocansey's recurring medical emergencies, which appear to coincide with scheduled court dates. I mean, this was something that the Deputy Attorney General, who was in court, also observed and said, yes, since the court has made the observation for them, but it's important to indicate that lawyers had said that by Friday, he would have been well, so that they will come to court. So they were seeking an adjournment to Friday so that he will come for the plea to be taken. But the court granted more than that to Monday. But the Deputy Attorney General did indicate that when they come back on that day, they will indicate how prosecution intends to proceed with this particular matter. But
let's stay a bit further on this. Martin Pebo is private legal practitioner. He's joining us on Zoom right now. Lawyer Martin Pebo, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Hello? Hello, Lawyer Martin Pebo? We'll try to reconnect with Lawyer Martin Pebo on this particular one. But let's get to know the man we're talking about, Professor Christopher Amia Ocansey, because last week we mentioned that, because a number of you have also made reference to why he's, in fact, sharing in the same sentiments of the trial judge on this matter about his absence because of medical issues. He's an 80-year-old man, correct?
Yes, he's an 80-year-old man.
And what else do we know?
And it's fair to refer to him as a good old prof. Yes, this is a man who, former board chair, this is the position in respect of which he's now been accused of some wrongdoing for which he's before the law courts. He's also the former board chair for Public Procurement Authority, also former Minister of State, a former Minister for Ports, Harbours and Railways, former Director General for the Ghana Education Service. He's also the former MPP National Council of Elders member and also a former MPP National Chairman aspirant. So this is a man who has served...
Yeah, much people is going to be joining us on Zoom in a bit. Yeah,
yes,
right
so this is a man who has served extensively in the public service. He's also served his party in other capacities and also made attempts to actually lead the party MPP. So he's a man who is well known. He's very popular when it comes to public service.
Okay. Lawyer Martin Pebo, good evening. Can you hear me now? Hello, Council, good evening. Hello, Lawyer Martin Pebo, can you hear us? Hello? Unfortunately, we have a connection difficulty to Lawyer Martin Pebo. We'll try to reconnect with him, but let's hear what the Deputy Attorney General, Justice Shremsai, said about this whole SkyTrain matter again, and we'll hear Lawyer Martin Pebo shortly. Take a look at this.
An active process, the Attorney General has instituted an active process of recovering, tracing these monies. So I would say that whether you do it voluntarily or not, we will do whatever it takes in the name of the Republic of Ghana to retrieve every pesewa that we can from private hands and restore those monies to the people of Ghana and to the taxpayers of this country. No, the press conference is not. The AG will hold press conference when the need arises. In this particular case, we believe that the issues are already in the public. The new journalists are very much aware of the SkyTrain issues. It was first raised in the Auditor General's report, so I don't think anyone is in a doubt as to the facts of this case. So there may not be any press conference on this. But where there's a new case which will require thorough briefing, we believe that the people of this country are entitled to know every bit of what we are doing with the power they have given us. So we will hold press conference when the need arises.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
This is Adam Shremsai there. Let's try to see if we can get a clear connection to Lawyer Martin Pebo. Good evening, Council. Can you hear us? Hello? Hello? Hello, Lawyer Martin Pebo, can you hear us? We'll try to establish that connection to Lawyer Martin Pebo again. But here's what we do know when it comes to the charges against Professor Christopher Amia Ocansey, the former Education Minister, former Director General of GES. He once contested for the national chairmanship of the New Patriotic Party. He was a former board chair of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, a former board chair of the Public Procurement Authority. But we do know these are the 4 charges against him in this SkyTrain matter. We'll get into it shortly right now here on Ghana Tonight. And the 4 charges: count 1, conspiracy to commit a crime willfully, that's causing financial loss to the state. And then also count 3, willfully causing financial loss to the Republic of Ghana. And count 4, conspiracy to commit a crime, intentional dissipation of public funds. And then also count 6, intentional dissipation of public funds. And that is what we do know. These charges against Professor Christopher Amia Ocansey. And that's one that we're keeping an eye on and how things are playing out here on Ghana Tonight. Also live on 3FM 92.7, on TV3 Ghana on Facebook. Lawyer Martin People, if you can hear us, good evening. Thank you for joining us. We'll try to reconnect with him on the telephone right now, as we're having some difficulty connecting on Zoom. Martin People will be joining us on the telephone to have a quick conversation on the development earlier today in court, whether or not the sentiments and concerns by the trial judge in this particular case is one that is indeed having any merit or otherwise, to the extent that Justice Comfort Tesiam raises this issue over the timing of Professor Amia Ocansey's recurring medical emergencies, which she says appears to coincide with scheduled court dates. Counsel, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Ocansey.
Great. Now, is the trial judge's sentiments about Professor Amia Ocansey's medical reasoning for his absence, so to speak, seeming to be irregular, or in her view, suspect being unwell, is one that creates a certain impression? Does it have any merit whatsoever, or it may be too far-fetched to think that Professor Amia Ocansey's consistent, or at least the past 2 absence in court because of medical reasons, raises some suspicion?
Well, so let's say, you can't rule out suspicion. When you say suspicion, it's normal that out of 34 million people, some people will suspect that it's a deliberate attempt to stall the case. We can't rule it out. It's not possible for every citizen to think that everything is okay, everything is kosher. No, some will think there's a suspicion. In the same way, the trial judge cannot be faulted for, raising concerns about the fact that for 2 consecutive sittings, Professor Amia Ocansey could not avail himself because of this illness, and so the judge has a point. And the thing is that without him being present at this stage, the trial cannot go on. The trial cannot go on. Mm-hmm. So you see, it's not as if, and the Constitution requires that the trial should take place in his presence, unless he comes to court and is misbehaving, making a lot of noise, blah, blah, blah. That's the law. Or unless he specifically decides not to come at all. Once he's been served at this stage, if after a while the court feels that he does not intend to participate, the court can go ahead without him. That's trial in absentia. But looking at it, I don't think Professor Ocansey would want that kind of situation to befall him. So it's okay that the judge is raised it, okay? But it's also possible that all of those ones, they are genuine sicknesses. We don't have evidence to think that he's not well. We don't have evidence, so we have to grant him that. But as we grant him that, it's not possible for everybody to grant him a presumption of being honest in the situation. Mm-hmm. It's very normal for some citizens to have their doubts and their concerns. That makes us a society. We should be very worried if everybody thought that, oh, there's nothing wrong, it's a normal coincidence.
I see. But let's assume, without admitting, just for the benefit of this analysis, if on Monday there's also another medical emergency, because just as today, there was a medical emergency at dawn, and so even though he was scheduled to appear, he couldn't. If it happens the third time, does that create the fertile ground for this kind of suspicion as well, although there could be very genuine reasons why he wouldn't be available, assuming for the third time?
Oh, you can't run away from the fact that it will increase the suspicion. The suspicion will be fueled. You'll be taking a notch or two higher. Yes. So we just hope that this doesn't happen. Okay. Yes. In a normal society, as I said, if you look at it like the bell shape, you see, the society, you get a distribution. Those who believe, those who disbelieve, a very suspicious, mildly suspicious, extremely suspicious. Yes. So if you do a bell shape, like a psychologist will tell you, if you put society together, you get a bell shape kind of thing. So there will be a distribution amongst these various character traits, the suspicious, those who are very suspicious, those who are not, etc. So if he fails to make it the third time, it will certainly, in actual fact, more people will join the suspicious group, because they'll be like, why 3 times in a row? You see? So I believe that everything will be done to avoid such a situation happening the third time. Because, like I said, let's not forget, the Constitution allows, in appropriate circumstances, for the trial to go on. But so far, it doesn't look like we are in that situation where the trial should go on in the absence of Professor Kofi. We haven't reached that situation yet. Yes.
Right. I appreciate your time on this matter. Very brief indeed, straight to the point. I thank you so much for joining us.
Okay.
Martin Pegbo, private legal practitioner there. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up next, the Energy Commission report reveals Electricity Company of Ghana power sales losses hit a record high in over 2 decades, standing at 32%. Well, how did the company get to this point? Well, for many who have been watching and listening to the trajectory of issues, you may not be surprised, but then again, there is a story and a concern in there. The power sale losses of the Electricity Company of Ghana may not be news, but according to the latest Energy Statistics Bulletin released by the Energy Commission, ECG recorded the power losses amounting to 32% of its total electricity purchases in 2024, the highest in over 2 decades. According to this report, which we have excerpts of, I will be showing you shortly, the ECG purchased some 17,009 gigawatts per hour of electricity last year, but managed to sell only 11,561 gigawatts per hour. The remaining 5,448 gigawatts per hour was lost through a combination of technical and commercial losses. And we're going to show you those technical and commercial losses in a bit. But you heard last week, John Jinapor, who was the Energy and Green Transition Minister, refer to the energy shortfalls, the shortfalls when it comes to collection by the Electricity Company of Ghana, which government would have to make up for. He projected that this year, if things continue this way, you have to cop out some 30 billion cedis. Last year, some 24 billion cedis was spent to make up for ECG's shortfall. This is John Jinapor sometime last week, and I'm going to show you what the energy, the bulletins from the Energy Commission's data shows. Take a look.
More importantly, the tariff itself, ECG is unable to collect all the monies. And so you're having a deficit of about 2 billion cedis every month when it comes to ECG's collections. When you add that deficit and you add the fuel, which is not part of the pass-through, you are looking at over 30 billion. Car Power has just sent us a letter that by 18th, they will shut down the plant because we owe them more than $400 million. IPPs alone, we owe them $1.7 billion. And so it's serious. I must be frank with you, Chairman. Today, as I sit here, this morning, my headache is how to get the next parcel of liquid fuel. The fuel we have to take us 2.6 days. We've placed order for fuel, but it has to be paid. We've procured some fuel on credit and working with the Ministry of Finance to pay. But the truth is that the Ministry of Finance also has its limits.
John Jonappo, acknowledging the limits that the Finance Ministry has. Well, this is what we do know. Last year, this is how much that was spent to make up for the shortfalls of ECG in terms of the recoveries. 24 billion. This year, they project 30 billion. As if that's not enough. In fact, when you look at NETCO, and we're going to put that on the screen right now, the coverage of the Northern Electricity Development Company, also based on the earlier information that we got from the Energy Commission, they also posted some sales loss margin of 31% as of the end of 2024. The only picture that looks quite good is that of Enclave Power, which is a private sector power, as it were, distributor within the enclave that has specifically to do with the free zones. And that is a really small company. So you may not want to use that as a reference point in doing the justification for the private participation in the management of ECG, but there are those who are really strong about it, that to the extent that there is an example in terms of the module that Enclave Power is using, and they are posting a year-end loss between 2015 and 2024 of just about 2.5%, then that means that there's some justification to look at the kind of module that they are running. But NETCO also not looking too good, posted the power sales loss of 31%. Now, that leads us to exactly what the causes are. Here's what the Energy Commission itself put in this energy sector bulletin that we're referring to. This is it. Technical losses, metering challenges, which we know, and you've heard the Ghana Standards Authority talk about the calibration of meters. If meters are not calibrated, it is going to contribute to the loss of revenue for ECG and by extension, the country. Metering challenges there, billing anomalies, commercial losses, power theft, we're seeing in there as well. And so the problems or the challenges of ECG are, and in fact, the power sector is well documented. But what has to be done going forward? Ben Boachi is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ASA. Ben, appreciate you joining us here on Ghana Tonight. I mean, hearing these statistics and ECG with this highest in terms of power loss in over 2 decades, wouldn't surprise you, would it, at least based on what we've been hearing so far?
I think this is what we have been saying all along, that performance of the electricity system or the distribution of electricity is measured by these indicators, the efficiency and the proportion of revenue generated from how much you have procured. So you have to at all times compare how much power you have been given to how much revenue you have made from the space. And we keep drawing attention of all the analysts, the media and others to the fact that when we trend it and we look at the data, ECG's performance over the years had been terrible year on year, right? And yet, people will always try to convince you that the utility was doing better than it had been before, even when the data showed that the performance kept declining. So for me, I'm not surprised. I was expecting it, and that is what the regulator is also saying. And that's really a confirmation of what some of us know, that the performance of the utility has been terrible year after year for the past 5 years or so.
I see, but Ben, for the Public Utilities Workers Union, they say all of this data that looks or makes ECG look that gloomy and inefficient and so bad is just meant to create the fertile ground for the private participation of in the management of ECG, as the likes of you have been pushing.
They should bring contrary data. I mean, if they are serious enough, they should bring data to show how much power they were given how much they sold, and what revenue occasioned from it. And I think it's easy to prove the data wrong. Otherwise, let's just keep quiet and accept what the reality is. I mean, you cannot just say that it's a ploy to do what? The reality is that there is significant waste that is draining the public purse. All of us are contributing to address this problem from the budget, from taxes. On every petroleum product you buy, every liter of diesel or petrol you buy, you are paying over 1 cedi to be able to address these kinds of inefficiencies. And yet, we are not able to address it. And governments still have to find money to pay. So you're not only paying your electricity bill, but you are paying merely by consuming petroleum products to manage these inefficiencies. So the least you expect from somebody who should know better, who should know how the system has been managed, is to be candid with the data and admit it. Otherwise, you provide the contrary data. And that shows that ECG performed better than what the Energy Commission is actually telling us. The effort of a utility has been how to, siphon the resources that come in through some of those contracting that we've spoken about on the revenue collection side, where companies who are not on the ground, they are not chasing anybody for money. They are not doing anything. By virtue of even implementing just an app, they are taking close to 5%. If you look at how much money goes into people who are collecting revenue, about 5% of the revenue is lost. It used not to be the case.
Right.
All right. And that has been the focus of the utility for so long. And we keep continuing on that trajectory, without reversing the trend. And that, for me, will not ensure that a lot more revenue is collected. And beyond that, we are efficient in the utilization of what is collected. Otherwise, all of that will amount to waste in the system, and you will not be able to pay all the other relevant stakeholders in the space. And government has to take up the bill, and that is the reality.
Zubachi, appreciate you for this. Thank you so much for your thoughts as always. Ben Boachi is the Secretary of the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Stay with us. When we're back, President John Dramani Mahama is projecting a single-digit inflation target by next year, mid of next year. That's by June next year. Stay with us. We'll hear what an economist has to say about this. Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up, President John Dramani Mahama has urged donors, investors, and industry leaders to harness the untapped potential of key value chains to drive sustainable and inclusive economic growth. President, in his opening remarks at the third Ghana EU Business Forum, called for prioritized investment in non-traditional sectors to harness the Ghanaian talent of the youth. And he indicated as well that there's a projection of mid-year, that's next year, single-digit inflation. Take a look.
Fiscal consolidation is underway. We reduced the fiscal deficit on commitment basis from 7.5% of GDP in 2024 to 6.4% in the first half of 2025. And we're on track to meet our 2025 target end year of 3.1% through expenditure rationalization, improved domestic revenue mobilization, and strong anti-corruption measures. These figures, though early in the year, are clear signs of a disciplined and inclusive economic recovery.
Professor Patrick Asuming is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, appreciate your time. Now, looking at the inflation trajectory as you have observed over the period, this target of a single-digit inflation target by June next year, 2026, feasible, all things being equal?
Well, I think if you look at the target that has been set for the end of the year, 11.9, if you achieve that, if by the end of the year you achieve that, then single digit by mid next year is feasible. But many things have to happen before we look at that. I think you look at how the inflation breaks down the last 2 years. You see, food inflation has been our biggest challenge. Now, so the question is, what measures have the government started implementing by way of the food? I think in some sense it's a little too early and it's a little unfair to say not much has been done, because the government has just been formed barely a month ago, and it takes time to start putting plans in place. But you want to see exactly what what kind of measures they are going to put to address the food production problem. Something has been put on paper, to be fair to them, but we need to begin to see the implementation and see how it will work. Then the other thing they have to deal with is the inflation expectation. A big part of reducing inflation is reducing the inflation expectation, because in the last 2.5 years or so, we've had inflation above 20%. That expectation has been, deep-seated. So part of the problem is dealing with it. And the way to deal with that is actually drive inflation down aggressively for people to begin to see that the central bank is committed to keeping that level of inflation. Now, the challenge with that is, if cost push side is playing a big role, then it becomes more difficult for the central bank to do that. And I think the other challenge the government will face is that this year's budget has been extremely tight. I mean, it's massive fiscal consolidation if you see what you're trying to do for the year. You can only do that for 1 year. I think it's a year because of the size of its mandate, as well as the goodwill that it's having. They can implement that kind of harsh budget for 1 year. Next year, that's not going to happen. And then suddenly the government has to spend more, and then the pressure might start. So while it is feasible, I think we need to start beginning to take the actions, especially if you take the food side. It's not something that you do things for 3 months and you start seeing results, because it's a whole, you have a whole production cycle. You have to make the right investment at the right times. Farming inputs and fertilizers have to be ready when the planting season is starting, and also you have to invest in irrigation. And the government hasn't had time to do all of that. So while there will be some elements of the inflation that will be relatively easier, indeed, if the there's excess liquidity, as the BOG governor said the last time. That one will give you some purchase, but we need to drive down food inflation before we will be able to achieve that target.
And I talk about the food inflation. In fact, the IMF is projecting end-year inflation of 17.5%. Government in the budget is talking about 11.9%, 12%, as the Bank of Ghana's own also reviewed from 16 to 12%. How about that?
The IMF projection, I'm not sure which period that was, but, you know, as the year unfolds, you know, currently we are much closer to 17.5, and I think we should see decline, the marginal declines continue. And then suddenly we meet that target. I think the IMF projection probably came a little earlier than the time the government read the budget, so that could feed into it. So I think, I mean, at the outset, before we saw the cedi appreciation, I thought that the target was very ambitious. That target represents halving of the inflation rate between what we did in December 2024, which was 23.8. So we are halving it to 11.9. That is quite steep, given the recent struggles and given that we haven't been under 20 for better part of 2 years, more than 2 years. So if you put those two together, I think so far, if you've seen the trend for the first 4 months of the year, I think it's looking positive.
Right.
And we should be able to surpass the IMF target.
And I do appreciate your thoughts on this. Thank you so much. Professor Patrick Esuming is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do thank you so much for staying with us. Join us same time tomorrow for another conversation. My name is Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by